Shalom, everybody. Akiva Gersh here. So excited to be talking Aliyah with Laura Ben David. Laura Ben David is a photographer, public speaker, and Israel advocate. Inspired by her Aliyah experience, Laura began writing and never stopped. She is the author of the book Moving Up, an Aliyah journal, a memoir of her move to Israel. She has spoken all over the world about Israel, Aliyah, and other topics, often with beautiful photographic presentations. She's an amazing photographer. Formerly the head of social media at Nefesh B'Nefesh, Laura is the director of marketing at Sheva Yisrael, as well as a marketing consultant. And one of the coolest things to know about Laura regarding Aliyah is that she made Aliyah in 2002 on the very first ever Nefesh B'Nefesh flight. Laura, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to start off with the main question that anybody would ask anybody who makes Aliyah. What motivated you specifically to make Aliyah?
It's actually a funny thing because we made Aliyah in 2002. So that was like right smack in the middle of the Intifada. And it was actually the Intifada that kind of spurred us on, not that itself, but that was what got everybody talking. All of a sudden, people were talking about Israel. We were living in Boca Raton, Florida, and our rabbi at the time was Rabbi Brander. And in fact, the assistant rabbi was Rabbi Fass, who founded Nefesh B'Nefesh. But everybody was talking Israel. Like all of a sudden, it was like, Israel needs us, and and Israel's our homeland, and all this stuff about Israel. And it was just like this, eureka moment. Like, wait a minute, like Israel is our homeland. That means that should be our home. That's where we should be. Why are we not there? And it was like the craziest time of all to think about Aliyah. And again, nobody was doing it at the time. It was very unusual because this was pre-Nefesh B'Nefesh. Yeah. We just kind of got lucky that it got founded right exactly when we were going. But yeah, that was the thing that inspired us.
That's incredible, amazing. So many people, when they think about Aliyah, like if they're thinking about Aliyah for themselves, they're considering it. Many people think for years about Aliyah, before actually making it. But one of the big questions I think is the question of kids. If they're making Aliyah with kids of various ages, whether they're young, whether they're more into their teenage years, that's obviously like a big consideration, because people might have their, I want to live in Israel, inspiration and desire, but, that same level of desire might not be, with their kids. And then of course there's the whole acclimation process for kids, which is different, than for adults. Not that adults don't have their own acclimation process, but obviously for kids, it's a very different experience. So I know that you made Aliyah with kids. Can you just share with us a little bit of what that was like to make Aliyah with kids?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have further insight because I also worked as an Aliyah advisor for Nefesh B'Nefesh. So I've talked to many, many people about this. Our kids were like kind of borderline age-wise. My oldest at the time was 12 and a half. Yeah. So that's like already like, junior high school, like they're already starting to be people. Mm-hmm. The key with kids who are really all kids is to get them on board, it's really, really important that they feel like this is a family project that they are on board with rather than something that is being done at them or to them. Mm-hmm. Because that lingers. This is a life change and you're uprooting them, taking them from their friends and their family, their school, their experiences, everything that they know they're being removed from, literally. So to have them be really a part of it and making this a family conversation from the beginning and getting them on board, I think is key. And even as kids get a little bit older, if they, like high school age, which is very challenging, and anyone who says otherwise, it is challenging in high school. But if the kid wants to come and is motivated to come, then it's doable at any age, really.
That's amazing. I think that's incredible advice. I like what you said, that they should see this as a project that the whole family is doing and not something done to them. Yeah. I'm just thinking, like, was there a moment for one or more of your kids when you made Aliyah, after making Aliyah, obviously, like, where you felt like, okay, it's working, like they're connecting, they're, becoming part of Israel life and all that?
Yeah, like when my girls grew up and married Israeli boys.
There you go.
Yeah, no, it's tough. And look, and I'm not going to say that it wasn't, without lots of bumps in the road, because it was, learning Hebrew was a challenge that we didn't really anticipate, because they say, oh, when you make Aliyah, the kids learn Hebrew by Hanukkah, but they don't tell you which Hanukkah. So,
Right.
Some kids, it takes a long time.
That's a
um,
point.
but right, and it's definitely a challenge. So yeah, there were a lot of those moments. Like I remember seeing my kids playing with Israelis and thinking, wow, we made it. And then I remember my son who was playing with his little Israeli kids, and they were jabbering in Hebrew, or I heard jabbering in Hebrew, not necessarily my son. And then I was like, wow, you were talking to them, and how was it? And he's like, I have no idea what they were saying. We were just playing. So
Right.
like, there's what we see and what we experience as parents, and it's not necessarily what our kids are experiencing, but we just have to like kind of roll with it and be with them and hear them and see what challenges they're facing and help them through.
That's amazing. I know, again, you made Aliyah with kids, with 4 kids, if I'm correct. And my wife and I, we made Aliyah before kids. We have 4 kids now, and they're all born in Israel. But even though I think we have a lot of similar experiences, because of course, in the house we speak English, of course, with
Of course.
the vocabulary of Hebrew words thrown in, but their first language was English, even though they were all born here. So when we send them to Gan specifically, it's very much like kind of that fear interpretation, like what is it going to be like? They're not going to understand the other kids or the Ganenet, and so they and we go through our own process as well. And in the end,
Totally.
like you just said, I remember those moments where I'm hearing my kids speak Hebrew, or they're understanding their Ganenet. It's like, what an amazing thing to see.
Totally.
I also know that you also had you had 2 kids born here in Israel. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was there anything,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, about that interesting, different about like bringing kids, making Aliyah with kids, and then you had like 2 kids who were like Sabras and like born in Israel. Anything about that you can
So
share with
many
us?
things. Well, first of all, my first one who was born here was actually born on Yom Ha'atzmaut, on our very first Yom
Wow.
Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day,
Wow.
which was super cool. But more than it being super cool, it was kind of my plan. Like when I realized that I was expecting around that time, I'm like, oh, he should be born on Yom Ha'atzmaut. That would be such a great story. And then he was, so that was cool. And then of course, we have his birthday party every year on Yom Ha'atzmaut,
Wow.
get
The whole
fireworks for his
nation,
birthday. It was definitely, what's that?
the whole nation is celebrating with him.
Right, exactly. Um, so that's definitely very cool. I mean, for me, I was actually a maternity nurse in America.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole concept of having babies is something that I relate to on a different level, somewhat of a professional level.
Right.
And then having babies, having children here was something so unique and so different and very, very exciting to bring Sabras to the world. But like you, I was kind of shocked to discover that my Sabras were, despite having never lived in America, were pretty much just as American as my other kids.
Mm.
And the same challenges, the language, exactly what you just said, were all still there. And I was surprised. It was like, what do you mean? What do you mean we have language issues? He's born here. He's been in Ma'on and daycare since he was a baby. He's like, was brought up on hummus. How can he have language from?
Right.
Like that shouldn't be a thing.
Right.
But it is. There's challenges to being an immigrant family, and we just have to be willing to go through those challenges with our kids, regardless of where they're born.
100%. Again, I can totally relate. I mean, our firstborn, it's interesting. Every kid is like a little different. Like our secondborn, she like picked up Hebrew literally like in a week. It was like, where did that come from? And she sounds
Wow.
Israeli. When her schoolmates or her teachers found out that she spoke English, they were in shock, because like none of that American came out. But with our first son, it was very different. He struggled with Hebrew at the beginning. And when he started speaking Hebrew, he even had like a bit of an American accent, which I have to say with all full disclosure and honesty, as much as we love the guy like crazy, it was a little hard for my wife. And I'm like, really? We made Aliyah, we moved our whole lives. Like we want our kids to sound Israeli, and when he was not, that was like, okay, obviously, we didn't make him feel bad or anything, but like that was like a little thing for us. But it was also very interesting to see over time how that faded away also. And now
Right.
he's 13, he's our oldest, he's 13 years old. And like, I mean, his Hebrew flies out of his mouth so quickly these days, like any of his friends.
Exactly.
And I have to stop him sometimes, say, what did you just say?
Exactly.
So it's an interesting process for sure. Like we're talking about, even if our kids are born here, but I think the best we can do is support them and love them and just, even, know that they're home and they get to grow up here, which is awesome. You mentioned being a nurse I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I was just going to add that just a funny thing that my daughter, who's one of my daughters who's married and has her own children, she married an Israeli, Yerushalmi, he was born and bred in Israel, and their daughter, who's now 3, does not speak Hebrew. She can't speak Hebrew. She can't like string a sentence together. It's hilarious to listen to her try. She will get it. She will be a zillion% fluent.
Yeah.
But she's growing up with a lot of English in her house, and that's just
Right.
so they get it. Takes time.
100%. I remember, my wife and I telling our kids at some point when they were younger, very young, we're like, one day your Hebrew is going to be better than ours, and it sounded like this like far off time. It came much quicker than we thought. And of course, then they're correcting us. They're embarrassed of us a little bit. Like we give them our text messages to like, hey, did I say this right?
Right. Exactly.
But you mentioned like being a nurse in America, and I know you did something and have been doing different things here in Israel. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about like just that whole kind of journey of like finding work, working here in Israel, like what that's been like for you personally?
Yeah. So one of the things that I advise people when I talk about making Aliyah is being flexible. That we have whatever we have in America or wherever we come from, and this is our life and this is our experience. This is what we're used to and what we expect. Don't expect anything in Israel because it's just different here. Everything's different here. The irony is that I went to nursing school because I thought that one day I might make Aliyah and thought it would be a good profession in Israel. And then arrived in Israel and never worked a day as a nurse here. Yeah, I just I wasn't such a great nurse, to be honest. I mean, I was a good person. My patients liked me, but I wasn't that great at nursing. So it's not like I was like, oh, wow, I'm going to further my career here. I was actually already thinking of doing different things. But when I came, I just kind of went with the flow of what was available. Like I couldn't work as a nurse initially anyways, because I needed to take the nursing boards in Hebrew. Right. And that was extremely daunting for me at the time. I think you could take it in English now, but I just started looking for other things, just something to like get a paycheck. And I started finding things in marketing and that was just something natural for me that I just enjoyed. And I just kind of went from one marketing / writing kind of media job to another. And it just kind of evolved. And then photography evolved further. I guess I'm an evolver. But that's something that I love. And so, yeah, it's just kind of keeping your eyes open for opportunities and being flexible and, and willing to take risks, I guess, and take chances.
Amazing. Amazing. When I think about Aliyah, when I talk about Aliyah, whether it's with my students or with other people, or if I'm writing about Aliyah, I come across for myself and for other people this question somewhat often, which is, what keeps you here? You came from America, the Golden Medina and all those kinds of things that people might say sometimes, why'd you leave? Will you ever come back? And all those kinds of things. So my next question for you is, you've been here for like a long time. You've been here for like 18 years now. What keeps you here? What is, okay, so you made Aliyah, right? I like to talk about making Aliyah as it's a continuous journey. It's not like you make Aliyah and it's over and then you're here and like it's done. No, it's like this continuous kind of process of making Aliyah and acclimating to life in Israel and all those things. So what keeps you here? What keeps you like, this is my place, this is where I want to continue my life?
It's an interesting thing that you say about making Aliyah as like a continuous thing. I never thought about it, but it is true, because really every day or all the time, I make the active choice to stay, because I could always go back if I want to. And the longer I'm here, the less likely it would be that I would ever go back. And it was extremely unlikely from the beginning. I love it here. And it's my heart and my soul. Israel is my heart and my soul. But there are definitely things that tempt me about going back, and yet I never would. The things that tempt me are things that are not meaningful. They're just things that are, those tempting things like shopping, family. I'm lucky that I have my family. All my children are here. I have 2 siblings who moved 7 years after I did, and they're all here. 2 siblings still, and my parents back in the States. But I mean, my family anchor is definitely here in Israel, but I do travel a lot for work and so forth. And I get my shopping in, and, you know, Amazon, I just heard they just started doing deliveries again for a reasonable price. So we
Nice.
can get our shopping, right?
Yeah.
Right. And these are important things. I mean, they're stupid things, but they're still important things because, you know, we're people with needs and desires, and those are real, you know, whether or not they're meaningful, they're still real.
Right.
So it's not the meaningful things that draw me to move or leave. It's the things that are really not meaningful. So, you know, they're out there. Yeah. It's every time I go to the States, I'm like, oh, the shopping and the bigness, and you can drive for hours and hours and hours and never get to the end. And all that is all very nice, but it's not a reason to leave. And the reasons I stay are the reasons that speak to me here. The reasons of this is my homeland. This is my place. These are my people. The holidays are my holidays. I mean, in America, I was kind of an incidental Jew. I mean, yeah, I was Jewish. I was even Orthodox, you know, an Orthodox shul and all that stuff, but it still wasn't my life. My life was Boca Raton, Florida. And okay, yeah, we were kept kosher and we kept Shabbat and we would go to shul, but that was like the small part of my life, and the big part of my life was everything else. Here, being Jewish and being Israeli is my life, and it's such a difference in meaning, and I could never give that up.
Amazing. Beautiful. Wow. My last question you might have already answered in your last two answers, but if you have anything else to add, that would be
Okay.
great. You know, obviously we know, you know, a lot more people are considering Aliyah right now with Corona and what's happening with America, and, you know, things are being shaken up in a way that in our generation we just have never seen before.
Right.
So my question for you is, you know, even before Corona, you know, this was I think a good question to bring up, but especially now. Just like your message, you know, what would you say to someone considering Aliyah? Like, what if you want to give like a message to them or advice, something to consider, something to think about? What would you say to people today? Like right now, they're considering Aliyah. Maybe they're planning on Aliyah. Maybe they're making Aliyah next week. Who knows? But in that whole kind of category of people, you know, with Aliyah on their minds and their plans, what would you say to them? What's your message to them?
So I guess there's a few pieces to it, but it's one major message. I mean, making Aliyah is the most amazing, wonderful, you know, fulfilling thing that I've ever done, and can be for anyone. But you have to come with the right reasons and the right attitude. It's not a cure-all for, you know, like people who are like trying to like escape from, I don't know, whatever issues a person has. The issues follow you. Don't think that you're going to escape from them. And it's not like, you know, like, oh, you arrive here and you can just live on your joy of Zionism and everything. Like that's not going to feed you, or, you know, or take care of you. It's work. It's hard work, but it's worth it. So it's you have to have like the mindset of, I'm doing this, I'm in it for good or for bad, you know, like the marriage vows, in sickness and in health till death do you part. Like this is like a major decision. It's a major move, and it's amazing, but relax. Like take it in stride, take things as they come, be flexible, be open-minded, and you know, enjoy as much as you can of it. And, you know, when you hit those speed bumps, because you will, the bumps in the road, just roll with it. Get help that you need, you know, support, build your support system. It's amazing. I mean, it's something that it's a lifelong change. It's like, for me, the most incredible move I ever made. But just, you know, relax, be prepared, and it can be amazing for you as well.
Amazing, beautiful. I really do. I do believe that the more people prepare before they make Aliyah, and that's not just, you know, the purchases and figuring out the appliances or the schools, but like really hearing, you know, words like yours, like listening to people who have made Aliyah, reading the words that they wrote about it, whether it's a blog or something else, you know, really kind of
You
getting
could
that.
read my book.
Read your book, right? Read my book, right?
And your book.
Exactly.
Read our books, everybody.
There you go. Google Norman David. You're going to find her book. You're going to find her photography. Really is unbelievable and inspiring. But really, I really do believe, I think maybe, I might be wrong, but I really do believe, like, once upon a time, it was like, okay, figure out all like the very technical logistics, make Aliyah, and we'll figure out the rest when we get there. But I feel like what people are doing more now is like, no, I want to know, on Facebook groups and all kinds of other, maybe social media things that I'm not part of, but whatever. Like, talking to people, hearing about their experiences. And I really do believe, like the words you just shared could be really, and I believe will be very helpful for people to kind of prepare mentally, and to know that if they hit those, or when they hit those bumps in the road, they're not the only ones. We've done it before, we're still doing it, and we're still doing it together. And that's like, I think a great sense of, I don't know, belonging, but also like comfort. Okay, it's not just me. I'm not alone.
Right. Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Laura, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really great to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Your time and continued success with all the incredible things that you're part of and what you're doing for the Jewish people. From that.
Amen. Thank you, and you too.
All the best.